Hi, my name is Irina, and I'm a 27-year-old Romanian from Bucharest. The story I'm going to share with you shows how crazy life can be. From a young age, I had a huge crush on my best friend Chris, who was 5 years older than me. Our parents grew up together, so that meant we naturally became close friends. I have so many childhood memories of time spent with Chris. My favorite one was from when I was about 6 years old. For some reason, I was really upset, so Chris took a flashlight and shined it on the wall, then did a shadow puppet story for me using his hands. It's seriously one of the most precious memories I have. Also, whenever any other boy came anywhere near me, Chris would jump in and tell them to go away. It was like I had my own personal bodyguard. I always looked up to him, but the older I got, the more jealous I became any time a girl would go near him. That's the moment when I realized I had a major crush on him. We hung out all the time, but I never plucked up the courage to tell him how I felt. When I was 13, my family threw a New Year's party at our house. Chris was there, and the whole night we kept exchanging glances. At some point, I got up to go to the store, and he jumped up and offered to keep me company. On our way to the store, it was like time had stopped. Talking to him felt like the most natural thing in the world, and I just knew in my heart that we belonged together. On our way back to the party, I got the biggest shock of my life. Out of the blue, Chris turned to me and kissed me. I couldn't believe it! Then he told me he'd always had a crush on me, but the 5-year age gap scared him too much, so he had never told me about it. As quickly as I'd got my hopes up, they disappeared. Clearly, that meant we couldn't be together. I was so disappointed. It was as if he'd read my mind because he kissed me again and told me not to worry, and he promised me that if our paths ever crossed again, he'd marry me. That was the last time I saw him. His parents got a divorce, and him and his mom moved away, so we lost contact. But life has to go on, right? Throughout the next years, I had other relationships, and after college, I met someone. We fell in love and got married. It all moved quite fast, and right after our wedding, we moved to Italy. But that's when things went downhill. Back when we were in Romania, we spent a lot of time with our friends and had different schedules, so I'd only see my husband in the evenings. But in Italy, we were together all the time. Suddenly, we had no friends, only each other. And the more time we spent together, the more we realized how little we actually had in common. My husband felt like a stranger to me. We almost never kissed. He came home just to sleep. And I realized we were more like roommates than husband and wife. We started fighting, and I moved into the other room. After a few weeks of this, I couldn't take it anymore. We both realized if we continued, we'd never be happy, and we cared about each other too much to live a life like that. We decided to start filing for a divorce. We were adults and came to the conclusion that we'd be better off as friends. That was the toughest time of my life. But luckily, God has sent down an angel to help me. One day, I was coming home from work when something crazy happened. I received a Facebook friend request and almost dropped my phone when I realized who it was from. It was Chris! I hadn't seen or heard from him in 13 years. What a surprise! Of course, I immediately called him, and when he picked up, I almost cried. It felt so good to hear his voice again. We ended up chatting for hours, and I told him everything that had happened. You won't believe it, but he said he'd wait for me. After all those years, I was still the love of his life. In the years we'd spent apart, Chris has also had other relationships, but he never got married because he never lost hope that we'd meet again. He told me I was the only one he'd ever want to marry. On my 26th birthday, my divorce was finalized, and Chris was there for me during this whole time. Afterwards, we moved back to our hometown together, and I've never been happier. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine we'd meet again. and we were both worried about what our families would think, but everyone was so happy for us. A few months after we'd moved home, I discovered that my fave artist of all time, Jacob Lee, would be playing a 2-day concert in our town. We went to watch him, and it was so much fun. His music was so symbolic of our love story. On the second day, we went to see him again, and it ended up being the best day of my life. The promise that Chris had made 13 years before suddenly became a reality. At some point during the performance, Chris was invited up on stage and started telling everyone our story. Then I got called up to join him on stage. I was so nervous, but deep in my heart, I knew what was about to happen. And sure enough, at my favorite artist in the whole world's concert, Chris got down on one knee and proposed to me in front of almost 600 people. Can you believe it? Of course, I immediately said yes, and now we're planning our dream wedding. And the best part of it all is that not only do I get to marry my childhood crush, but Jacob Lee is also invited to our wedding. It's like the best thing that ever happened to me. Jacob's song Chariot is going to be our wedding song, and the lyric Promise to Love You All My Life is pretty relevant to our love story. Don't you think? Hey everyone, I'm Gabby. I'm 18, and I have the most amazing boyfriend called Hayden. He's kind, funny, ridiculously attractive, and he makes me happy. The problem is that although I know how great he is, a series of events happened that left my parents convinced that he was a pervert. I mean, it was not simply just an awkward situation you may be in with your significant other's parents. He somehow had really disastrous meet-the-parents moments. Hayden likes alternative music, and his staple clothing choice is usually a band tee and jeans. My parents are quite old-fashioned. My mom loves Frank Sinatra, and my dad is into his classical music. I guess they're just under the impression that people that choose to listen to loud music are all in a cult or something. Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. The first time Hayden met my parents, I was a little worried, as I didn't want them to see his band tee and misjudge him. It was going well. Hayden had flattered my mom, complimenting her Black Forest Gâteau, and he'd made my dad's day by laughing at one of his lame jokes. Things seemed to go smoothly, and my mom and dad were like, "Okay, son, you almost have our nod of approval, so come on." But that was just until things started to be a disaster. Hayden then even offered to help my mom tidy up. It was as he was placing the plates back in one of the upper cabinets that his band tee rose up and the tattoo he had of a lioness on his back was revealed. Right at that moment, my dad dropped all the apple cubes he was holding, and my mom, she dropped her jaw. Oh, for us, it was just a tattoo, but at that moment, I realized that for my parents, it was like a real lion tending to jump straight at them. My poor, naive Hayden had no idea about the storm behind him and didn't know why my parents just smiled, sort of forced, and didn't say a word. After Hayden had left, we sat back in the most serious way ever and really had to talk about a lion who just came through our house and tidied things up. They were both furious that I was dating someone who had abused their body. They were convinced that he was a criminal. I tried telling them that his tattoo was in memory of his late mom, and it held a lot of significance and meaning for him. They didn't listen to me and said that I just made excuses because he made me blind. They were adamant that I wasn't to see him again. Of course, I ignored them. I wasn't going to stop talking to my amazing boyfriend just because he had a tattoo in memory of his mom. I was hoping that things would settle down and they'd see how amazing Hayden was. But one thing led to another. One day, I was listening to music in my room when my mom barged in looking flustered. Apparently, they'd driven past Hayden in town and saw him terrorize some kids. What? Hayden? Terrorize some kids? He is a volunteer at a local orphanage and he loves kids. My mom even said that she saw him push a little boy into a bush. I burst out laughing. The whole thing sounded ridiculous. I rang up Hayden. Turns out, he'd seen a group of kids push this boy into the bush. He chased them off, then helped the boy out of the bush and checked that he was okay. It was totally opposite. But my parents didn't hear me out. You know, if they saw a lion stand by a little deer, so of course the lion must be the hunter and the deer is the prey. If you think that things couldn't get any worse, then trust me. They unbelievably could. My parents banned Hayden from coming over, but we still hung out. One night on our first anniversary, we were out at a restaurant for a romantic dinner with candles and roses. Everything went great, and yes, again, until the last moment. I went to the bathroom, and after I finished using the toilet, my pants zipper got stuck. A handsome boy was waiting for me out there to enjoy a lovely night together, but here I was, walking out of the toilet with an undone zipper and a frown on my face. After hearing me mumble about it, he quickly understood what happened, took off his jacket, and tied it around my waist while trying not to laugh. He took me to an alley nearby, which was dark and empty, so that he could help me pull it up. And all of a sudden, my parents showed up. Like, out of nowhere! I can never forget that moment. I was standing deep in the dark, empty alley, my boyfriend was on one knee trying his best to pull my pants zipper up, and my parents were frozen in shock, with their group of friends pointing at an unknown ridiculous couple. It was mortifying! My dad stormed over to us and shouted at Hayden with all the rude and dirty words he could think of. My parents were both so furious that I was dragged into their car right away. I was grounded for maybe forever, until I got some sense. They confiscated my phone, my laptop, and even my Walkman. Did they think that he could send me a message using radio waves, or what? One day, my dad barged into my room, found me almost bored to death on my bed, then told me that my mom was taken to the hospital and we needed to hurry up. We rushed over to her and found her laying on a hospital bed with a broken ankle and some scratches on her body, and a handsome boy was sitting next to her and taking care of her. He was none other than Hayden, my boyfriend, the rejected lion. My dad jumped in like, "How dare you?" And my mom stopped him like, "Don't be so rude. He saved my life." Both me and my dad had no time to understand the situation as another tattooed guy rushed in, bringing my mom's bag and said, "Oh, madam, are you okay? I caught that damn robber for you, so if your hands are not broken, please check your bag." Of course, her hands were fine. They were grabbing my dad's collar to protect my boy. At this point, everything was clear. She got mugged, and the unlucky robber stole her bag and knocked her off the street. Hayden and his tattooed friend showed up at that moment, and here we were. My parents eventually gave him an opportunity to explain himself. They finally realized that Hayden was a good person, and they're now his biggest fans. They're always inviting him round for dinner and saying nice things about him and about the lioness, too. It only took my mom being mugged for my parents to realize that my boyfriend wasn't a pervert. I'm glad that my mom wasn't seriously hurt and that Hayden found her on time. Even though I don't agree with some of my parents' views, it doesn't change the fact that I love them very much. I'm just glad that they now... Hey, I'm Kirsty, and I have an identical twin sister called Arabelle. We didn't have a normal upbringing, as our mom abandoned us at an orphanage when we were 6. We have our mom's dark blue eyes. That's pretty much all I remember about her. I'm not fully sure why she gave us up. I guess she was young and just couldn't cope. As little kids, my sister and I were close. We used to fool the other kids and the nuns into thinking that we were each other. Arabelle always wore a pink bow in her hair, so we'd both wear one and freak the kids out by double-crossing them in the corridors. Those were good times. But when we got older, everything has changed. I started to become green with envy at Arabelle. Everyone always liked her more than me. The nuns called her Little Cat, and every kid kept surrounding her like she was a sparkling star or something. They all thought she was so sweet and polite. This annoyed me because I knew the real her, and she wasn't sweet at all, if not a completely fake girl. And she just knew exactly what to say and do to get the most from people. Then, when we were 12, a lot had been happening that completely changed our lives. The orphanage had financial problems that could not be saved. Our nuns loved us so much that they didn't want to lose any of us, but they had no choice but to allow the social organization to find us adoptive parents. The nuns didn't want my sister and I to be apart, so they sent us to 2 families in the same town. But the god of justice must be blind as usual. Arabelle was way luckier than me. She was adopted by a wealthier family. My parents loved me anyway, but, well, she received all the best things, and that was just not fair. We went to the same school, and I was so sick of listening to her bragging. When we were at the orphanage, we used to wear the same kind of clothes, but now things were different. Arabelle always stayed in style, wearing the most beautiful clothes. So although we are identical twin sisters, whenever we stand next to each other, she would be like a queen and I would be a maid. She easily got everything I ever wished for. Princess bed, a large window with a sea view, piano and ballet classes, and an amazing mom and dad. She talked about it all the time, and I got sick hearing it. It seemed like all of the greatest things were not enough for her. She didn't appreciate what they gave her and just always wanted more. If I were her, I would enjoy that dream life with gratitude and respect everything I got. Life was so unfair. Why did Arabelle always have the best while a girl like me was suffering from the day I was born? Adopting one part of a twin made our two new families close. My new family was always visiting Arabelle's big house for barbecues and nice dinners. To be honest, I did not want to go there at all. It was not a simple family meeting. It was just an event for her to show up. Her parents were so nice, and just by looking at the way they treated her, I could tell that they loved her so much. They often patted her head and called her puppy. Arabelle acted all sweet. Then, behind their backs, she said this nickname made her feel sick, as she wasn't 5. No one seemed to realize the truth. Arabelle was absolutely not as cute as they ever thought. She actually was kind of insolent, haughty, boastful girl, and most of all, she was a fake. I remember one time when her mother's birthday party was taking place. Her mom looked stunning in that gorgeous dress, and people in the room just stayed silent for a while to show their impressing. Arabelle pretended to be cute and gave tons of compliments to her mom. But as soon as her mom turned her back on us, Arabelle whispered to me, "Look at her stupid smile. She is thinking that she really is beautiful, while everyone knows that I'm the one who looks stunning here." I was so sick of her double life. She was so lucky living that great life, but she had no appreciation for what she already had. And she was so fake. One time, I tried to unmask her true colors. I tried to tell my parents and our mutual friend about how she'd acted behind their backs, but they never believed me and just told me to stop being mean and selfish. They didn't understand a thing about her real version and even scolded me. I was the one who deserved that life, not that fake loser girl. That was when I decided to make a bigger plan. I wanted to replace Arabelle and live her life. I started staring at her work and copied her handwriting. I practiced imitating her voice. We sounded pretty similar, so this was easy. I secretly followed her and her lame friends at school so that I could learn all about their hobbies and habits. But my family was not as wealthy as theirs. I could only stand outside the restaurant, the clothing store, or the cinema. Watching Arabelle enjoy the good life just made my determination grow. When our families met up, I made an effort to get to know her parents more. Her mom likes playing the piano, and her dad likes taking care of his bonsai trees. Her mom can't eat seafood, and her dad is allergic to peanut butter. I jotted down every little detail about her life in my planning book. There were a lot of things I needed to learn until I was fully confident that I could become a second Arabelle and successfully replace her. But then something suddenly happened that made me speed up my plan. This boy called Milo I liked at school started flirting with my sister. And she flirted back. She knew I liked him, but this didn't stop her from agreeing to go on a date with him. She was such a demon. At this point, I couldn't stand her walking around and stealing all the best things I've ever wanted in my life. I had a plan. Back when I was in the orphanage, there was a man who often came to us and said impolitely to the nuns that they should sell him some children to solve their financial worries. Of course, the nuns refused him and kicked him out. He continued to come over a couple of times, and once he gave us his phone number, saying that if any of us got into trouble, we could find him. Then the nun showed up and threatened to call the cops. Well, that was the last time I saw him. I always kept that number because I knew there would be a day I would need it. And that day finally came. I called him, and we came up with a plan to solve my Arabelle issue. He sent her an anonymous message telling her to come to a secluded corner in the park to find out some juicy gossip about Milo. Of course, my nosy sister agreed. The man promised my sister would be sent to another place to work to help him earn money, and she wouldn't be harmed. I left a letter at home saying I'd had enough of the poor life and I'd found a better place to go. I told my parents not to be sad and not to look for me. I hid in a corner of the park and waited for my sister to appear. Then, when they took her, I could easily hop into her life and replace her. There would be no more Kirsty anymore, as I would perfectly be back as Arabelle. Well, the better version of her. Suddenly, I saw a black car stop in the distance. 2 tattooed guys got out of the car. I could see guns in their back. They stopped for a moment to wet a hanky with some liquid thing. This didn't feel right. I knew that this was going way too far. They would hurt my sister, and I was the one who was participating in this sin, and I knew that I would live in guilt for the rest of my life if I ever let it happen. I immediately ran out from where I was hiding, grabbed my sister's hand, and pulled her away. I heard their footsteps right behind us, so I ran as fast as possible to the crowd of people and screamed loudly at the same time to let people around pay attention to us. The other 2 men probably gave up when we ran into the crowd. After we got back to her home, I told her that I happened to be walking past and overheard the guys saying they were going to kidnap her. Then I just ran to reach her as fast as possible without thinking. She hugged me and thanked me for saving her life. She said that she always thought that I didn't like her, and she used to feel that way about me, too. Wow, that moment she came clear that she used to think that I was just a gross, dirty girl and didn't deserve to be around her, and she from time to time tried to pretend herself in front of me just to make me jealous. She was so sorry for her selfish mind and promised to change her character for me. I also told her that sometimes I became so mean because of envy, but facing this dangerous situation made me realize how much she means to me. And I will not let jealousy blind me anymore. Turns out, living a great life was that simple. We just need to talk straight and openly with each other to solve the problems between us. As for my parents, they read the letter I left them and got upset. We had a good talk, and I realized I was being the ungrateful one. Yes, so they didn't have as much money as Arabelle's family did, but they were good people who cared about me. Arabelle hadn't been the only selfish one. I'd been selfish too. Life's good, and Arabelle and I are getting on better than ever. Still, the guilt from what I planned eats me up. Should I come clean about what really happened, or should I keep it a secret and carry on like normal? I mean, it's not like anyone was hurt, right?
My name's Maria, and I'm an introvert. Large groups of people, super loud parties, and being the center of attention, no thanks. I know I don't sound like the kind of girl who goes out and drinks a lot, yet I'm often drunk. Can you believe it? And turns out, drunk me is a complete nightmare. Cringe. It all started a few years ago when my best friend Kimberly had a pajama party for her birthday. I was nervous about it, as there were girls going that I didn't know. But I didn't want to let my bestie down, so I went along. We had dinner first, deep pan pizza and cheese fries. Yum. Then suddenly my behavior turned weird. I couldn't stop laughing at every little thing. Then I ran around the house pretending to be an airplane and hung my head out of the window and started waving to complete strangers who passed by. I don't remember any of this though, but one of the girls videoed me and uploaded it to her social media page. The next day at school, everyone was pointing and laughing at me. Turns out the video had gone viral. I just couldn't figure out why I'd acted like that. It was so out of character for me. Then things got worse. Way worse. Once I'd finished my lunch in the school canteen, and 15 minutes later, as I walked out of there, I began to feel lightheaded. A girl who often gave me dirty looks passed me, and I slurred out, "What are you looking at?" Then I slapped her. This girl saw red, so she hit me back. A teacher had to pull us apart, and I was sent to the principal's office. He accused me of being drunk and summoned my mom. As you can imagine, my mom was furious. She grounded me for a whole month and cut off all my pocket money, as she'd thought I'd use them to buy alcohol. I told her I hadn't drunk any alcohol, but she didn't believe me. I was so confused. I didn't understand why these weird things were happening. I just wanted a quiet life, so why did my personality suddenly change? Then it's my younger sister's birthday. About 10 minutes after eating a piece of fruitcake, I suddenly began to sweat and felt dizzy. I started to laugh for no reason, chatted out a load of nonsense, then fell off my seat. Everyone was staring at me with confusion. Finally, my mom realized that something was up with me. She took me to see loads of specialists, but they were all clueless. Then, finally, a specialist gave me a diagnosis. Turns out I have a rare condition known as autobrewery syndrome. This causes the digestive system to automatically endogenously ferment. Then, when I consume sugars or starches, these produce alcohol, which make the body drunk. To curb such sudden bouts of drunkenness, I had to drastically cut down on sugary and starchy foods and take medication. As you can imagine, not being able to eat these types of foods was not fun at all. I like candy and chocolate, and I love pretzels, which also happen to be one of the most starch-filled foods out there. Talk about a bummer. Over 2 years of living with this condition, I've gotten used to it. I've discovered food substitutes, such as veggie fries and paleo bread. It can be a hassle in restaurants, as I hate being seen as the awkward customer with a long list of demands. But it was always not that bad, since I eventually knew how to control my sugar input. So I guess I learned how to be a normal teen and lead a fairly normal life. Well, at least until I ended up with a massive crush on a cute boy from my class called Scott. Being the shy girl I am, I can't imagine ever telling him how I felt. But I figured that my rare syndrome could help me do just that. So at Kimberly's birthday party, when Scott passed me a piece of gooey chocolate cake, I took it from him and ate it. I soon started to feel more confident. And before long, I dared to request songs and confidently sing in front of people. I chose to sing the Harry Styles song, Adore You, and I dedicated it to my amazing bestie, Kimberly. But while I sang it, I looked over at Scott. Later that night, Scott messaged me to ask if I was home yet. Then we talked more. But the next day, when Scott called out to me in the corridor, I only dared to shyly greet him with an awkward smile. Lack of yeast, I returned to my usual shy girl self. Then, during my English lit lesson, the teacher grouped me with Scott to perform a Shakespeare classic. He was playing Romeo and asked if I wanted to play Juliet. Oh, for a shy, quiet, and stuttering girl like me, performing in front of a whole class seemed unimaginable. But I didn't want anyone else from our group playing Juliet, so I plucked up the courage to say yes. So, before every rehearsal and, of course, the official performance, I ate some candies. The performance was very successful, and afterward, Scott asked me to go to his friend's birthday party with him. I was super worried, but then I thought if I got a little drunk off food, everything would be fine. During the party, I was so nervous and longed for the confidence that I ate a bit too much candies and fruits, as I often did. I usually knew how much to eat so I could remain in control of my actions, but my nerves caused me to overdo it. The rest of the night was a blur. But Scott told me I was laughing like crazy, walking unsteadily, and I even wrapped my arms around his friend Freddie's neck and kissed him on the cheek, which caused Freddie's girlfriend to slap me in front of everyone. Even though Scott was mad at me, he still took me home. I tried slurring out an apology to him, but I was so drunk I ended up vomiting all over his lap. Talk about embarrassing. Still, being the sweet guy he is, he walked me inside and my mom took me straight to bed. Then she explained my condition to him. When we next spoke, he was really understanding about it and told me that he liked me just the way I am and that I didn't need to eat bad foods to feel more confident. I know I was wrong to abuse my condition. The drunk, confident version of me is a reckless mess, but I don't want to be her anymore. It's hard sometimes, especially as I find social events so awkward and uncomfortable. But I know I need to follow the doctor's instructions to manage my condition. Now I'm trying to build up my self-esteem instead of relying on false bursts of confidence that starchy foods give me. I know it isn't going to be easy, but now I realize that there are plenty of people out there that like me for me.
Have you ever questioned if your teacher hates you? I wish I didn't have to, but yep, my teacher hated my guts, and she went out of her way to make it very clear. I'm Lori, by the way. I'm 15 years old, and I guess you could say I kind of stand out because of my looks. People say I'm kind of pretty. Anyway, this year I started high school, although I only joined halfway through the year because I was off sick for 6 months with glandular fever. Yep, I had the dreaded mono. I was so tired of lying in bed feeling sorry for myself, so when the doctor said I could finally go back to school, I was over the moon. Little did I know what was in store for me. On my first day, I had to show all my teachers my hospital certificate to explain why I'd missed so much of the year. When I gave it to Miss Atkin, my math teacher, she smiled and said, "Welcome. Nice to see you feeling so much better." I smiled back at her and said, "Thank you." And I was about to walk away when suddenly she said, "Excuse me, you're Lori Hannison?" Her face looked all weird, and when I told her, "Yep, that was me," something inside her changed. She gave me a cold stare and told me to go to my seat immediately. I was confused a little bit about her attitude, but then I moved on from it. The most important thing was how I could catch up with my class. After missing 6 months of math, I was super behind and couldn't understand anything. My mom had to hire a tutor for me, and he was such a good teacher. Only after 3 months, I finally caught up with them. I had a notebook from our sessions with lots of notes inside, and whenever I couldn't remember something, I'd just look at it. Well, one day, I had it on my desk at school, and Miss Atkin caught me seeing my notes. She marched towards me, grabbed it, and slammed it down in front of me. She was so angry and got right up in my face and said, "Never, ever bring another teacher's notes to my class. Do you hear me?" As she said that, a little bit of spit flew out of her mouth and landed on my nose. I was horrified. Why was she so angry at me? It kinda scared me, and I thought maybe she was just angry because I wasn't as good at math as everyone else. After that, I didn't dare bring my notebook to class, but sometimes I still struggled, so I'd ask my friend who sat nearby to help me. Miss Atkin always caught me asking her and would put me in detention. One time I just sneezed too loud and she gave me detention. I mean, can you even believe? It annoyed me so much that I started to rebel. I'd often fall asleep in her class, and I seriously lost all motivation to do well. And that's not all. One day, I wore a new dress to class, and I swear I looked exactly like all the other girls at school. But Miss Atkin publicly embarrassed me by making me stand up in front of everyone, then said, "Girls and boys, Lori is a fine example of someone who pays more attention to what she wears than to studying. Don't be like Lori." I could feel myself blushing, and I wanted to cry. She was deliberately being mean to me, and I had no idea why. I was not that kind of girl. I normally loved studying, and I didn't care about clothes and shoes at all. I couldn't say anything, though, because if I spoke back to her, she'd give me a worse grade. What made it all even worse was that she was also the cheerleading coach, and she had her pack of cheerleaders following her around everywhere. One time I was standing in the hall talking with my friend Joe. We'd been best friends since we were like 3 years old, and we also live in the same street, so we'd grown up together. Joe always had my back. So we were standing there chatting when Miss Atkin and some of her fave students walked by. Suddenly I heard one of the girls say, "Oh look, surprise, surprise, it's Lori flirting with a boy again." Then one of the other girls said, "Seriously, she's such a fake. I mean, she's using her illness to get attention from boys. How pathetic." I couldn't believe it. Did they think I was deaf or something? They were the ones who were fake with their thick layers of makeup and all of their gossip and drama. I didn't really care that they were saying these things, but what really got to me was the way Miss Atkin laughed along with them. I actually saw her nod her head, so she agreed with them. I knew that wasn't okay, and Joe saw it too. He was so angry and grabbed my hand and said we had to report her to the principal. I stopped him though and said, "Just leave it. I am still the new girl here, and I don't want to cause any drama. And anyway, I have a plan." I smirked at him as I said this. So, Miss Atkin has this policy where if someone's phone rings in class, they have to answer it on speakerphone. And that policy includes her, too. So that day, I pretended to bump into her as she entered the class and watched as her phone dropped out of her hands. I quickly picked it up and apologized for being so clumsy, but at the same time, I unmuted it when she wasn't looking. Easy peasy. You see, I'd arranged for Joe to call her. This was going to be hilarious. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, her phone started ringing loudly. Her ringtone was Beyoncé's Single Ladies, and everyone burst out laughing. She freaked out and quickly grabbed her phone to cancel it. But Joe was persistent. He just kept calling, and everyone in class reminded her of the policy, so she had no choice but to answer it. Well, just wait for this. She answered, and suddenly Joe's voice filled the room. But he'd put on a funny accent to make himself sound older. Honey, don't forget about our secret date at our favorite hotel tonight. Miss Atkin looked like she wanted to die. She said, "Who is this? I don't know you." Then Joe said, "Come on, baby, what's up? Is your husband there?" Miss Atkin was now visibly shaking and said, "You've got the wrong number." But Joe wouldn't stop. You're so cute. I'll see you tonight, baby. Get ready for a fun night. Wink, wink. At that, Miss Atkin hung up and the whole class was just deathly silent. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Joe had really outdone himself. However, I hadn't exactly thought it all through, because a couple of days later, Joe and I were about to walk home when he got called into the principal's office. I went with him, but they wouldn't let me in. I could see Miss Atkin in the room along with the principal and Joe. She'd somehow found out that it was Joe who'd called her, and now the principal said that Joe would be expelled and that his parents would need to come in for a meeting the following day. Oh my God, this was all my fault. When he came out, I rushed over and started apologizing, but Joe said, "Don't worry, I did it, so I'll take the responsibility." I was beside myself with guilt. I just kept saying, "Joe, no, this is my fault. I'm the one who should be expelled." But Joe wouldn't even listen to me. Well, that evening I told my parents the whole story. I was crying as I told them, and obviously they were angry, but they were also supportive. The next day, Joe's parents came for their meeting. The principal was there, and the school board, and of course, Miss Atkin. Luckily, my parents arrived just in time to interrupt the meeting, and we burst into the room. We told them the truth, how I'd been so ill and had to get a tutor, and that's why I carry that notebook. Then how Miss Atkin had treated me so badly and been so rude to me the whole time. I told them the phone call incident had been my fault and that Joe had just wanted to help me. Suddenly, Miss Atkin stood up and pointed at me and said, "I knew it was you. You spoiled brat. You should be expelled." What happened next was crazy. My mom jumped up and said, "How dare you speak to my daughter like that? You hate her because she's my daughter. Get over it, Angela. It's been years." Well, Miss Atkin ran towards my mom and said, "You're a horrible woman, and so is your daughter. You deserve each other." She was about to grab my mom, but my dad jumped up and stopped her. I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was so shocked. The principal looked so puzzled. Then he told us all to go home and calm down. When we got home, my mom sat me down and said, "If you're being mistreated, you need to tell us. Don't suffer it out alone, okay?" I told my mom I was fine, and that school was great, but then my dad interrupted and said, "You're fine? Don't lie to us. You were almost expelled." Then my mom said, "Honey, calm down. It's not her fault. You saw her teacher. She's a demon." Then my dad just laughed, and I was so confused. Then he said, "Oh yeah, Lori, we should have told you this already, but Miss Atkin was at school with us." Then they told me how the three of them had gone to high school together, and both my mom and Miss Atkin had a crush on my dad, so they became sworn enemies. They fought all the time, and Miss Atkin had been expelled from school because of my mom. Of course, my dad hadn't known all of that back then, and he'd fallen in love with my mom. Wow, now I understand the real reason Miss Atkin treated me like that. She was obviously still angry at my mom, and when she'd seen my name, she hadn't been able to control her anger anymore, and she'd just released it all on me. My mom said, "Lori, you look exactly like me in high school. Because I was pretty, so many people were jealous." Then she turned to my dad, smiled, and said, "I can see that Joe is quite similar to your dad. You should be careful." At that, Mom and I burst out laughing. My dad was just speechless. And guess what? It all worked out in the end. Miss Atkin got reassigned to another school, and Joe and I were only suspended from school for 2 weeks. Now we're closer than ever, and there's definitely some real chemistry between us. Finally, high school is getting good again, huh? When my boyfriend and I broke up before heading off to different universities, I never imagined that my love life would take a pretty dramatic turn, where I ended up being the third wheel in an affair. Let me backtrack a bit. I'm Juliana, a 19-year-old amateur marathon runner. I'd been a part of a running club for the past 5 years that met twice a week. And during that time, I became quite close to 2 of the runners there. They were both much older than me, but we got on well. Leo was a middle-aged bachelor, and Charlotte was a mom of 2 and had been married for more than 20 years. They both work together in the same trading company. And I can't really explain it, but we all just clicked. We always ran together, but one morning, Leo didn't turn up. That was odd because he never missed a session. Anyway, Charlotte and I ran together. And that night, I received a message from Leo asking if I wanted to have dinner with him. I was a bit surprised, but this was Leo's first time inviting me to a private meal. But I still said yes, and we went to a restaurant downtown. At dinner, we got into some deep conversations, and at one point, I asked him, "Why have you stayed single till now?" He stopped a bit and replied to me, "It's hard to say, but I've just had a bad breakup a few years ago, and I wasn't ready to get into another relationship." Oh, that's why he decided to stay single, even though he's a pretty successful and attractive man. It was quite awkward after that. So I broke the silence by asking him why he hadn't come running that morning, and he just said something had come up at work. He was acting a little strange, but I didn't push it. Anyway, it was a nice dinner, and afterwards we shared a cab home, as we lived on the same street. Well, that's when something weird happened. Charlotte was waiting on his doorstep. Leo looked shocked to see her there and quickly ran out to check what was wrong. Charlotte hadn't seen me, so I wound the window down and happily waved to her, but to my complete surprise, she looked kinda annoyed. Then she just said they had work to do, and she hoped I got home safely. I didn't give it much thought, but in hindsight, what kind of work project needs to be done at 10 p.m.? Anyway, I didn't give it much thought. Surely there couldn't have been anything going on, right? I mean, Charlotte and Leo are colleagues and also close friends. And I'd met Charlotte's family. Sure, her husband was away for work a lot, but they loved each other. And they had kids together. I got home and chilled for a bit. Then about an hour later, I received a text from Leo asking if I'd like to join him for a midnight run. I immediately said yes. Well, to be honest, deep down, I totally had a bit of a crush on him. Even though I knew my parents would freak if they ever found out I was hanging out with the guy old enough to be my dad. It excites me, though. So I went for a run along the beach with him. And afterwards, we got some takeaway food and sat on the sand, listening to the waves and watching the stars. I guess we were both high off adrenaline, and also it was such a romantic setting with all the city lights reflected on the water. So we got into a really deep conversation about relationships and what we want from love. Then one thing led to another, and we started kissing. We ended up spending the whole night on the beach and even watched the sunrise. When I got home, I couldn't stop smiling. But then I saw I had 5 missed calls from Charlotte. I quickly called her back, thinking something must have happened. But when she picked up, she just said, "Where were you last night?" I told her I was on a run, and she said, "With who?" So I said, "With Leo? Why?" And she just said, "Oh, I was just curious. He wasn't answering my calls." Then we hung up. How strange, I thought. Anyway, that night, Leo asked me if I wanted to have dinner together again. And of course I said yes. I was dying to know if last night had just been a one-night makeout sesh, or if it could mean something more. When I saw him, I said to him, "Leo, sorry about last night. I got carried away, and I'm like half your age. I shouldn't have done that." Oh, I don't know what I was thinking. I expected him to say it was okay, and that he enjoyed it like I did. But instead, he said, "Yeah, let's just pretend that nothing happened." I felt so awkward after that, but I couldn't deny my feelings for him. After that, we got even closer, though. We spent more time together and spoke on the phone every night for hours. Then one night, Charlotte called me and said she'd had a fight with Leo, and that's why she'd gone to his place the week before. Now it all made sense. So that's why they hadn't been coming to the running club together. She said they still hadn't made up, and she needed someone to talk to. She sounded upset, but wouldn't tell me what the fight was about. Then she asked if we could meet up, although it was quite awkward. I had to tell her I was actually going to the theater with Leo. Leo and I both love going to the theater, and that night we had tickets to see Shakespeare in the Park. She asked why we hadn't invited her to join, and I said she could totally join us, but obviously it was too late to get tickets. Then she just hung up. Next days, I realized that Charlotte and Leo would only attend alternate running sessions so that they could avoid each other. I talked to both Leo and Charlotte about it, but they simply claimed that their work was getting stressful and hence they could only handle one training session a week. Then one Friday morning, I noticed Charlotte was in a seriously foul mood. Normally she was so upbeat, So I asked her what was up, and that's when she told me. She'd been having an affair with Leo for the past 3 years. I was shook. I mean, I guess I should have seen it coming, but I still couldn't hide my shock. I'd thought of her as such a role model, with this amazing family and a great job. And yet, here she was, nothing but a cheat. And with Leo, the guy I was seeing. Oh my God, what kind of mess had I got involved in? Charlotte begged me to keep it a secret, but I couldn't even speak. I was in complete denial. If she knew what Leo and I had been up to, and yet, why did it matter? She was the one having an affair, not me. I continued to see Leo, and one time he even invited me over to watch a movie at his place. And we made out again. It was amazing. But at the same time, I had Charlotte calling me every night for moral support, which made things really weird. For the next month or so, Leo and I kept meeting up, and I loved it. But I knew that if Charlotte found out, she'd kill me. It was such a dilemma. Then one night, she called me and said, "If you're my friend, Juliana, you'll stop seeing Leo. Please, I'm begging you." I couldn't believe it. How did she know? Sorry, Charlotte. How did you find out? She said it was a woman's sixth sense, and that she'd known ever since the night when I'd been in the cab with him. Plus, she said it was obvious that I'd had a crush on him for a while. All right, but why do you care if I'm still with Leo? You're married. He's single. He can do whatever he wants, I said to her. Then she said, "Please, for my sanity, please stop seeing him. I'm jealous, okay? It hurts to know you're together. Plus, he's not a good guy." Well, that did it. I wasn't going to break the sisters before misters rule, so I stopped seeing Leo. I couldn't hurt Charlotte like that, even though she was actually the one hurting her whole family by having this affair. Not seeing Leo made me miss him so much, but I told myself I had to keep my word to Charlotte, and yet you won't believe what happened next. Charlotte started seeing Leo again. I was so angry. She'd asked me to stop seeing him and had even said he wasn't a good guy, all so she could have him to herself again? What kind of married woman does that? Honestly, I was raging. One morning after running, I marched over to her and said, "Do you not have any self-respect? What about your poor husband?" Charlotte went bright red and said, "I'm trying my best. I know you're right, and I should respect myself and my husband more. You know what? From now on, I will keep my distance from Leo, just like you. Trust me." Okay, so at least she had the decency to say that. And I hoped she could do exactly what she said. After that, I decided to take a break out of this complicated 3-person relationship and tried to forget about Leo. I avoided him at the running club, and he avoided me too. Charlotte told me she'd spoken to him about dating me and how inappropriate it was for him to date someone as young as me. So maybe that's why the feeling was mutual. And he avoided me too. After all, it's better that way. He was way too old for me anyway. Plus, I was heading off to university. So it was all for the best. About Charlotte, after I confronted her, we actually became closer. And even now that I'm at university, she still calls me sometimes to ask how I'm doing. I asked her about Leo, and you won't believe it, but apparently Leo is now dating someone. Okay, I guess that's better for everyone. Although I sometimes wonder, if they break up, will he start up his affair with Charlotte again? Well, it's a story about my ebullient youth, when I got into so much trouble just because I fell in love with a middle-aged man. That whole period of my life was such a weird and messy time, right? But now I'm so glad I've met a nice guy my own age, and of course I never want to get involved in being a third wheel ever again. Have you ever met someone and known instantly that they are the one for you? I wish I'd realized sooner so that my teenage years hadn't been so full of drama and heartbreak. But you live and learn, right? And better late than never. By the way, I'm Versailles, and I'm 24 years old. It all began 14 years ago when I moved to New York and started at a new school. At that time, I assumed that moving from my hometown in France to New York would be no big deal. My mom and I were super excited and truly believed it would change our lives. Indeed, it did, but not in the ways I ever expected. On my first day at my new school, my mother insisted on driving me to school. When we arrived, I gave my mom a kiss on both of her cheeks and waved goodbye. My mom joked that she'd sort out any of the kids who dared to mess with me. I did feel quite shy, but I thought she was just joking. Turns out she wasn't. At lunchtime, I sat down at a random table and suddenly this girl appeared and said, "What do you think you're playing at, sitting at our table?" I didn't even have time to reply before she picked up my lunch tray and threw it off the table right into the trash can. "I said, move," she said. Everyone was staring at us now. I was so upset, I just covered my face. I didn't want to be that crybaby in front of all these new people, but I couldn't help it. The tears started falling. Then something crazy happened. A voice boomed out through the cafeteria, saying, "Get away from her!" And then, the next moment, I felt a hand reach out for my hand, and when I looked up, this gorgeous, tall boy was standing there looking at me when he picked me up on my feet. "Excuse me," the girl started, but the boy continued, "What is wrong with you? Do you have a screw loose or something? Your attitude is so gross. It'll make me puke. You disgust me, and I don't want to be friends with someone like you." She stood there with her mouth wide open as he grabbed my hand and walked away. I could hear her scoff from behind me, but her facial expression looked as if she'd lost. I took his hand and followed him out of the cafeteria, and that's when he introduced himself as Ryder. We sat down outside, and he asked me if I was new around here, and then he told me he loved my accent. And he even offered me half of his baguette and said, "Hey, come on, chin up. I'll be your friend, okay?" The best part is that the girl who bullied me had a major crush on him, so she was probably even angrier at me now. But I didn't care one bit. After that, I can't remember a time when we were apart. We were glued at the hip and did everything together. He taught me how to skateboard, and I taught him how to bake my famous pastries. We were like the dream team. He made me laugh so much, and he helped me become more confident. Day by day, I could tell I wanted to be more than just his friend, but I didn't dare tell him that. Then my 12th birthday rolled around, and my mom gave me a diary. She told me to write down all of my thoughts, and even my crushes so that I could reflect back on it one day. Then she winked at me and walked away. Ew, what was she talking about? I didn't have a crush. Did I? Okay, who am I kidding? I had the biggest crush ever on Ryder. Every time I saw him, I felt like there were a million butterflies in my stomach, and I woke up excited every day because I knew I'd get to see him. And then the time came for our school dance, and my friends were teasing me that I should go with Ryder. I kept telling them he was just my friend, but I couldn't fool them. They saw right through me. Later that day, Ryder invited me over to play video games, and as we were playing, he said, "Hey, wanna go to the dance with me?" I couldn't believe it. My heart was thumping in my chest, but I tried to play it cool and said, sure, I guess. And you know what? We had the best time ever at the dance. I was for sure on cloud 9, and afterwards I decided to journal about it in my diary. I never wanted to forget that night. So I wrote pages upon pages of how Ryder made me feel and how I loved him so much. Little did I know how everything was about to change. A few days later, Ryder came over to my house, and as soon as I saw him, I had the biggest grin on my face. But quickly that grin faded when Ryder said he had something to tell me. "I have some bad news. My family and I are moving to London in a month." This is a joke, right? Come on, stop playing around, I said, trying to hide the worry in my voice. But he just stayed quiet, and by then I knew he wasn't joking. I couldn't hold back the tears, and Ryder just reached out and held me in his arms, comforting me. He told me it would be okay, and we'd still keep in touch, but I felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. This was the worst news of my life. We decided to make our last month together the most fun we'd ever had. We went surfing, skateboarding, stargazing, and even did karaoke. I never wanted that month to end, but of course, it did. On our last night together, we had a slumber party and stayed up all night waiting for the sun to rise. When it came time to say goodbye, he gave me a framed photo of the two of us and said if I ever felt sad, I could just look at it and remember the happy times. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but I couldn't, and so he left. I was so down that I ran upstairs and covered myself under the blanket and cried. Later that night, as usual, I was about to write my day in my diary when it was nowhere to be seen. I shouted at my mom and blamed her, but she just said I must have misplaced it. Now I had no writer and no diary. My life sucked. Summer quickly ended and it was time for high school. Even though I had my friends, my life wasn't the same without Ryder. But life goes on, and so eventually I tried to move on from Ryder. My friends told me that this guy Lucas had always had a crush on me, and maybe I should give him a chance. Well, soon we started dating, and even though I didn't have the same special connection with him as I had with Ryder, it was still fun, and it took my mind off of things. Fast forward 7 years, and Lucas and I were still together. The relationship wasn't great, but I had my dream job and was living in my dream loft apartment, so I couldn't complain too much. Plus, Ryder had drifted away from my mind. I decided it was time to really put some work into my relationship with Lucas. So one night, I told him I was working late and booked us a surprise trip to Paris. When I got home, I was so excited to tell Lucas, so I ran up to our bedroom, and to my complete horror, I found him lying in our bed kissing another girl. They didn't even notice me at first. So I screamed, "What are you doing?" Well, that got their attention, and the girl ran off. I thought Lucas would apologize, but he just said, "What do you expect? You won't give me what I want, and you make me wait for marriage." Then he stomped out of the room and said, "I can have any girl I want." I was so shocked. I just dropped to the floor and burst into tears. Finally, he showed me his true colors, and so I kicked him out. The next few weeks were some of the worst of my life, even worse than when Ryder moved to London. I felt so stupid for wasting so much time with Lucas. One night, I was particularly sad, and I suddenly remembered the framed photo Ryder had given me. I dug it out of the back of my wardrobe and held it close to my heart. My friends called me, tried to get me to go out with them. They did everything to help lift my mood up, but I wasn't interested. I just needed time alone to process everything. I thought to myself about how the only person I wanted to see now was Ryder, but where was he? How was he doing? I had no idea at all. Another depressing week went by. I was lounging on my couch, soullessly staring at the TV in boredom. Then suddenly there was a knock at the door. I went to open it, and oh my God, Ryder was standing there. Was this real or was I hallucinating? I was so surprised I just jumped into his arms and didn't want to let go. We must have stood there hugging for ages. And then suddenly Ryder said, "I have something of yours." When I let go of him, he was holding my diary. Turns out Ryder had been in touch with my mom, and when she told him about my cheating boyfriend, he decided to come to New York and cheer me up. And then reality hit. He'd taken my diary? What if he'd read it? Well, he had. And he said that's why he'd come to see me, because he wanted to talk to me about it all. I was blushing like crazy. And then he said, "I've always loved you, V. Even when we were kids, I've never stopped thinking about you, and I want to be with you." Then he reached over and kissed me, and I swear time just stopped. I'd been waiting for this moment my whole life. That week was like a haze of kissing and chatting and catching up on lost time. He told me about his ex-girlfriends, and I told him about Lucas and the cheating. Then I plucked up the courage and asked him if he'd like to go to Paris with me, seeing as the trip was already booked. Of course, he said yes, and the next week we flew there and had the best week of our entire lives. We went to the Eiffel Tower and even visited my old neighborhood where I'd grown up. It was magical. And then one day, Ryder said he had to do a bit of work and told me to go pamper myself at a local spa. When I was done, I had a text from him asking to meet him on the roof of our hotel. He was so romantic like that. I first went back to the hotel room where he'd laid out a black, sparkly dress for me to wear, and then I headed up to the roof. I couldn't believe it! There were almost 1,000 roses laid out to form a path, and at the end of the path was Ryder wearing a suit. "I love you, V," he began to say. "I always have, and I can't imagine a life without you. Will you marry me?" I gasped in shock and screamed, "Yes," at the top of my voice. I'd loved him ever since I was a kid, and now my dream of being together forever had finally come true. I guess it took us some time to reach this point, but the best things in life are worth waiting for, right?
Hi, Ken here. I'm a breast specialist doctor. I'm trying not to be shy when I'm telling you this. It may be a bit awkward talking about my career, but because of it, or due to it, my life turns to be a drama. Well, I appreciate how hard it is for my patients to visit me. Let's face it, taking your clothes off in front of a stranger isn't easy for anyone. Yes, trust me, I've seen it all before, and it's no big deal. I'm just doing my job. I first met Gemma in my surgery. She'd found a lump and wanted me to examine it. When I checked it with my hand, this startled her, and her natural reflexes caused her to punch me in the face, and I passed out. I woke up a few minutes later to find both her and a nurse gawping down at me. My nose was still bleeding. I must have looked a right sorry state. She kept on saying sorry, but I reassured her that it was quite all right. And then with her permission, I continued with the examination. I found something, so I carried out a biopsy, and in the end, I had to tell her that she had breast cancer and needed to have a mastectomy. I could see her getting quite upset. I got used to patients' tears as they heard bad news. But this girl was so strong and brave. She just asked me some questions about the surgery and calmly left. Then, to my surprise, she impressed me more day by day. For the next few weeks, she brought me lunch every day. I thought she was worried I might bear a grudge for her punch or something, and this was her way of making it up to me. The food she brought was delicious, and I have to admit, seeing her was the highlight of my day. She was so kind-hearted and strong. What she was going through was horrible, but she never let it get her down. Instead, she walked over to my room with a skip in her step and a smile on her face. Soon, I fell in love with her, and I knew she felt the same way as our chemistry was obvious. But she was my patient, and I had my career to think about, so I knew I needed to be careful. Still, I couldn't seem to resist her or her cooking. I was busy at the hospital all day, so I never had time to date, while she was a martial arts instructor for kids and only worked in the evenings. So she had a lot of free time, so she cooked lunch for me every day and brought it to the hospital to eat with me. Even after her successful mastectomy, she still showed up with food. That was when I couldn't stop myself from confessing my feelings for her, and she said yes. Sometimes she had to wait many hours until I finished seeing my patients at the surgery. When she was asleep waiting for me, she looked like a little kitten. But gradually, that kitten turned into a tiger, and I soon discovered that this tigress bites. Ouch. Things were complicated talking about my duties at work. My patients are mostly female, and when I see them, I need to, what I have to do. Of course, Gemma also knows this because she's been examined many times already. She always fantasized that I would fall for another girl, one who in her eyes was complete. I tried reassuring her that I loved her and only her. Surgery or not, in my eyes, she was perfect. But regardless of how many times I told her this, she failed to believe me. She had a point that no girl could accept her boyfriend touching other women in their things, and even discussing that with them daily. I told her, normally the human body is a beautiful product of nature, but in the eyes of a doctor like me, it's just the same mass of meat. Would you find a chunk of meat beautiful? Isn't that shivering to think like that? Then she argued, so in your eyes, I'm just some chunk of meat, huh? Ugh. I tried telling her it wasn't like that, but geez, she's stubborn. It took me ages to calm her down. Every day she showed up at the hospital and glared at me as the beautiful young women came in and out of my room. Her actions hadn't gone unnoticed by the nurses, who told me that she was making the patients feel uncomfortable with her scanning eyes and judgmental expressions. I told them it was nothing. She was just going through a hard time, that's all. And please be understanding that it was natural for her to compare herself to other women. As I told them that, I was not sure if I could stay sympathetic for her coming behaviors. That afternoon during a late lunch, Gemma asked me if the 8th girl entering my room was beautiful. Oh my Jesus, the only person I can remember was the one who walked out of the room 5 minutes ago. I only remembered that was the one with the cyst, but I didn't remember her face. Why do you have to think so long? Are you recalling her figure? You just need to say she's not beautiful, right? I muttered out, yes, right. Not beautiful at all. She frowned at me. That means you still remember her. What about her impressed you so much? I stiffened. What was wrong with women? A week later, when she brought me lunch, she asked me, do you and the red dress girl know each other? As she'd been here at least 3 times in a row already. Every time she dresses very well. Whoever wears a red dress to the hospital? Isn't it normal for patients to come see the doctor regularly? No, it's not normal. I want to see her files. The third person from the bottom up. Come on, you know I'm not allowed to do that. Then you were not allowed to eat either. Geez, this was ridiculous. She wouldn't quit though, so in the end, I gave in and showed her the records. This girl had just had breast augmentation surgery, so that was why she came to be checked so often. Gemma just grinned and said, "I knew it! Those are fake!" I thought this would be the end of the matter, but it turns out it was just the beginning. Gemma bombarded me with questions about the red dress girl, such as did I find her attractive? I told her what I believed she wanted to hear, such as she was the only girl for me, and so on. But curiously, during the following days, she stopped going to the hospital. She just texted me a few messages every day and just disappeared. Maybe I should have chosen to be a specialist in psychology, as I may have been a good doctor, but I had no idea what women were thinking. A month passed, and she didn't show up at the hospital at all. I was so relieved at first, but couldn't stop wondering what my sassy girl was planning to do. Meanwhile, it was strange that the red dress girl popped up more and more, even though her health was completely fine. Then one day she turned up saying she had pain and itching. I scanned and tested her, but couldn't find the cause. Hey lady, you are healthier than me. If you are not sure, please do a checkup once a month, or I can also refer you to another hospital. Where's your girlfriend? She interrupted me. Sorry? She told me to wait and see, but I can't wait anymore. Where is she? Huh? What was going on? Just then the door opened and in barged Gemma. Oh my God. She looked like a different person. She was dressed so sexy, not cute like before. As a doctor and as her boyfriend, I immediately realized that she'd got breast implants. Before I could speak, a man stepped in and put his hand on her hip. Then he gave a confused look as he looked at the patient and immediately removed his hand from Gemma's hip. What the hell is going on here? I demanded to know. Gemma stared at the girl and said, I told you that if you continued to deliberately flirt with my boyfriend, I wouldn't leave it alone. The man, who was the same age as my dad, looked at Gemma. What flirting? Then he looked over at the other girl. Are you cheating on me? Then the red dress girl grinned at him and said, Who is the cheater now? What? They two were a couple or something? But what was my girlfriend doing here? Gemma turned to the man. She started it first. I have proof. I have taken pictures of the time she approached my boyfriend. If you two get divorced, you will need it. You will not want to divide your property with a wanderer, right? I shouted out, What the hell are you doing? The man looked at Gemma. You played me? You seduced me just because she flirted with your boyfriend and you wanted revenge? God, the door was still open and doctors, nurses, and patients came to see this chaos. They just pointed and thought this was a jealous scene. So it transpired that Gemma tried warning the red dress girl off me. And when that didn't work, she tracked down her husband and seduced him. And she even got breast implants for that silly plan. OMG, she was crazy. After that incident, I was severely disciplined for affecting the image of the hospital and was forced to work in a volunteer clinic in Mexico for 6 months without any payment. Yup. Now I'm in Mexico to pay the price of the mistake of... No. What was my fault? I didn't do anything. So the moral of the story is, don't get involved with a patient, however good their cooking is. Trust me, it's so not worth it.
Hey, my name is Erin, and as you can see, I'm just your normal 18-year-old college girl. But my friends who know me well know that I'm not a girly girl. If given the choice of a shopping trip or beer pong, well, then there's no contest. All through high school, I was known as the prank queen. One time, this girl teased me about my sneakers, so I put a real-life spider in her lunchbox. She totally freaked out. It was so funny. Another time, my teacher gave me a totally unjust C on my essay, so when she wasn't looking, I placed her coffee mug upside down. As soon as she picked up the mug, coffee spilled all over the table and her clothes. I ended up with a week's worth of detention for that, but it was so worth it. So, yeah, even though I was out of high school now, my mischievous nature wasn't going anywhere. I didn't even feel like I needed to change or be more mature because my life was still going perfect. I always had my longtime boyfriend Zach and my bestie Jace on my side. We went to the same college together. Me and Jace even moved out to live independently. Trust me, college life was worth 12 years of waiting. I'm a sociable and active girl, while Zach is pretty handsome and great at sports, so we soon became a popular and beloved couple at college. We were even given prom king and prom queen crowns for freshmen. I could see people admired us any time we were together. It was like our love was a typical relationship that they always wished for. Only I knew that deep down inside, Zach's feelings for me were changing. We seemed to argue all the time, and at the root of it was the fact that I wasn't gentle like most other girls. Ugh. He used to see me as the most interesting and attractive girl in the world. What happened? Once, he took me to a party to celebrate his basketball team's win. We cheered a lot, and at a point I was so excited that I jumped on the table and drank wine with the boys. Everyone around was cheering with joy, but Zach wasn't happy. Then later, when I was getting in his car ready for him to drive me home, I asked him, "What's wrong? Aren't you happy you won?" He replied,
"You're an embarrassment. No one else's girlfriend was downing wine and cheering at the top of their voice. Why can't you just be gentle, like your friend Jace?"
I was fuming. So fuming, in fact, that I got out of his car, slammed the door shut, and walked home. It was such an outrage comparing me with another girl. Not to mention that Jace is the complete opposite of me. She's super quiet and introverted. You know what they say, opposites attract. This is so true, as Jace and I are the best of friends. But there's no way I could be gentle like her. If he wanted me to be more like her, why didn't he consider himself to be as sweet and smart as her boyfriend, Jay? I arrived home to find Jace sitting in tears on her bed. Oh, my gentle, weak girl. That night must be Black Friday for both of us. So I hugged her and asked her what was wrong. She replied, "Jace changed, Aaron. He doesn't like my meekness and wants a more vibrant relationship. In fact, he wants me to be more like you. He said I should be active and strong like you are. Now I don't know what to do." I said, "Oh, God, boys are so confusing." You know what? Zach said the same thing to me. He wants me to be gentle like you. Jace looked at me with surprising eyes. Really? He did? I know, so hilarious, right? We have to do something to make them realize our true value. But what can we do? And once again, my prank-minded brain came up with an extraordinary idea. And I told her, "I know, Jace. We can swap boyfriends." "No, Aaron, I don't like Zach. And from when you have eyes for Jay?" Hey, don't get it wrong. I just want my Zach. So here's the plan. We will annoy our boyfriends so they won't want to hang out with us for a few days. Then we'll take this time to strike and flirt with each other's boyfriends. Then, just when they thought they're getting close to us, we'll be super annoying. Then they'll realize just how amazing their actual girlfriends are. Talk about an amazing plan, huh? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Jace was hesitant at first, but she eventually came up with my prank. As usual, our boys would soon come back as their old selves. I put my part of the plan into action by asking Zach over to watch the new episode of his favorite show on Netflix. Then, during the show, I ate popcorn really loudly, then continued to make comments and laugh while he was trying to concentrate. Eventually, he snapped and said, "Are you crazy? I'm trying to watch this." I replied, "What? You can't stand me anymore or something?" We argued a little bit, then he said, "You know what? You're annoying. Why can't you be nice, delicate, and gentle for just a moment?" Then he stormed out of the room and left. I immediately texted Jace. Mission completed. As for Jace, she went out with Jay. But whenever he asked her what she wanted to do or eat, etc., she replied, "Whatever," to everything. It soon drove him crazy because he didn't know what to do to please her. That was classic. When Jace kept shaking her head when he gave her options for what to eat, he got furious and drove her straight home. OMG, I couldn't stop laughing. So the first step was successful. Next, we needed to approach each other's boyfriends. A couple of days later, I found an excuse to meet Jay. He was a computer genius, so I messaged him on Facebook. "Hi, Jay. You know a lot about computers, right? Can you help me, as my laptop won't connect to the Wi-Fi and I have an assignment due?" Then he replied,
Sure. Just take a picture of it and send it over."
So I replied, "Can I bring it to your place? You gotta help me. I don't know what to do." Well then, of course, he said yes. So I wore a cute outfit and went over there. I kept touching his arm and praising him. Then, when he became more open to me, I started to tell him how lonely and empty I was, as Zach and I were over.
"Oh yeah? How come?"
He raised an eyebrow. I sighed out. "He thinks I'm too loud and boisterous." I tried to fake my tears. "Am I annoying, Jay?" He was surprised.
"No, you're not. You're an active, outgoing, and interesting girl. Don't let his judgment bother you."
Ha! So my tears worked. So I just pretended to cry harder. He frantically said he knew how to cheer me up. Then he took me to the amusement park. I laughed loudly in the middle of the roller coaster queue, let my ice cream smudge my face, and intentionally didn't wipe it clean. Then I demanded he win me a teddy on the beanbag throwing stall game. But every time he threw the beanbag, I shouted out and clung onto his arm. I knew boys hate being stuck and nagging all day. Like, really, really hate it. Soon, he would realize how awesome Jace was. Talking about Jace, she came to find Zach at the gym, but pretended like it was just a chance meeting. She asked him to show her how a treadmill worked, then used the same way as mine for Zach to ask her out. They went to the cinema to cheer her up. She refused to see the action film he was longing to see, as it was too noisy, said no to any movie he suggested, then eventually ended up in a chick flick. But right at the climax of the film, she complained it was too dark and crowded in there, and made him leave early. How ridiculous! LOL. He must be so annoyed. Then I told her to hit Zach where it hurt, his basketball match. Jace convinced him to take her along to his game, but she just sat there scrolling through her phone instead of watching the match. She didn't cheer him when he won a point, and immediately after the game finished, she asked him to take her home, causing him to miss the post-game gathering. Good work, Jace. He'd come running back to me in no time. I know you're probably thinking this plan was crazy, but it really worked. Jace showed up on our doorstep with flowers for Jace. Their love story had been given the refreshment it needed. Now, I just had to wait for Zach to realize what he's been missing. Only, to my horror, Zach wasn't messaging me. He was still messaging Jace. She ended up sending a picture of her with Jay and told him she was happy with her boyfriend and didn't have time for annoying people like him. Then, the next day, Jace arrived home all flustered. She told me that Zach had been waiting for her outside of her class, then told her he wanted a chance to take her on a date. What? He was technically still my boyfriend. How could he do this to me? Worse still, he was ignoring all of my messages. So I showed up at his house and wouldn't budge until he answered the door. He looked sheepish as he said,
"Aaron, our relationship hit a dead end. You're acting ridiculous, and I know you hung out with another guy behind my back." Meanwhile, a wonderful girl came to see me play basketball instead of you. She's the girl for me, not you.
At this point, I had to say the truth. Zach, you don't know what you're talking about right now. Listen, it was all just a setup so you could see what you were missing. It's worked for Jace. Her relationship is stronger than ever. And to my surprise, he replied,
"I know. I overheard you discussing it with Jace in the library. At first, I found you so cute because you were trying to save our love, and I just wanted to please you, so I pretended not to know. But then, I realized something. I don't love you anymore. Instead, I love Jace. And thinking about it, I guess I have for a while. She's like a little, arrogant cat that I want to pamper and take care of. You know, I've always liked cats."
What? She's not even arrogant. She only acted that way as part of the plan, I shouted.
"I don't care. All I know is I love her, not you.
Ugh! I can't believe it. What have I done? Because of my stupid prank, I've lost my boyfriend to my best friend. What am I meant to do now? Hey, it's me, Erin again. I'm here to tell you the concluding part of my story. So, I came up with a genius idea to swap boyfriends with my bestie, Jace, and mess things up to make our current boyfriends appreciate us more. Only my plan backfired massively when my boyfriend Zach decided he loved Jace, not me. Standing on Zach's doorstep having him tell me he didn't love me anymore was so humiliating, especially as a bunch of college kids were hanging out nearby and could hear everything. I yelled at him. We've been together for 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?
He replied, I know, and we've had some great times together, but we've grown apart. Besides, I know Jace loves me too.
Geez, Zach, she doesn't. It was all part of the plan.
Nah, before all that, she told me she was tired of Jay, and she really loves me, but she couldn't do that to you, or to Jay.
What? Unbelievable! I made this plan work for her, but all along, she'd been playing me and my boyfriend. She'd ruined my relationship behind my back and been fake to me all this time? Now she was playing happily ever after with Jay while my boyfriend was pining after her. I stormed out of there, but going home was the last place I wanted to be, so I ended up at the park. I sat there thinking things through. I couldn't just leave things like this. Both Zach and Jay needed to know about Jace's true face. Fueled by my anger and humiliation, I rushed off to find Jay. Then I told him everything. He looked completely shocked as I told him how the plan backfired, as now Jace has feelings for Zach and was just using him. I expected him to get upset or something, but instead, he just looked angry and shouted at me.
Erin, you're such a bad friend. I've always loved Jace, and I know she loves me too. Stop trying to wreck other people's happiness because your own love life sucks.
I stood there speechless, then watched as he walked off. OMG. That did not go as expected. Is that all people thought of me? That I was some bitter, jealous jerk? All I tried to do was save Jace and Jay's relationship, and it worked, didn't it? But now, I didn't know what was going on anymore. Sighing, I realized that I was wrong to confront Jay without talking to Jace first. For all I knew, Zach could have been lying. I mean, the guy was completely delusional. It just hurt so much that he didn't love me anymore. Instead, he loved my best friend. As much as this sucked, I knew I was wrong to blame Jace for this before hearing her out. Maybe Jay was right. I was a bad friend. I wanted to find Jace, but Jay must have got to her first, as she was never in our room anymore. Then a friend of ours told me Jace had moved back home. OMG, she'd moved out and not even told me. I tried catching up with her after classes, but she avoided me at all costs. Ugh, this sucked. I'd had enough of this. So one day, I stopped her at the classroom door and said, "We need to talk." She tried to walk away, so I grabbed her arm. But she replied, "There's nothing to talk about." How could she act so flippant when she had everything and I was left with nothing? So I shouted at her, "Excuse me, you ruined our plan? Now you have everything. You have your boyfriend back, and my boyfriend wants you, not me. Not only do they both now hate me, but you moved out without even telling me. Like an ending for our friendship? I know I didn't handle things that well, and I'm sorry for that. But I was hurting, Jace. And you've been the worst. So stop being so selfish and fix it up." Everyone was gawping at us, and Jace started blushing. Then she hissed at me, "Let's talk about it later. Not here." This only made me angrier, as I knew she had absolutely no intention of actually talking to me. Raging, I yanked back her ponytail. She yelped out, "What are you doing? Get off!" Then who should appear but Zach. Ugh! He pulled me off her, then hugged her. Then he shouted at me.
When will you grow up and think about your words and behavior?
I was shocked. Now he was on her side. Jeez. This guy had ditched me for my best friend. What was he expecting from me? Sunshine and unicorns? Suddenly, Jay appeared and saw Zach hugging Jace. Shocked, he said,
What's going on here? Jace, is this real? You and him? So what Aaron said was true all along?
Jace moved away from Zach and said, Jay, I'm sorry. It wasn't meant to be like this. He gave a nod of his head, then replied,
I trusted you, but it seems like it's not worth it.
After that, he left. Jace looked really confused and embarrassed, which, I'm not gonna lie, made me feel a little bit satisfied. Also, Zach was not a fool and got angry about how she'd moved away from him. I left them to their heated discussion and went into class. Good. Now her love life was a mess, and it was my turn to fix mine. I had to bring Zach back to me on my own. No one could help me now. So one day, at his basketball match with another school's team, I asked the cheerleader team to let me in the Rooster mascot suit. It was so stuffy in there, but it'd be worth it, right? I would surprise him by running to hug him and celebrate when the team wins. He would definitely be touched and see that I'm always by his side cheering and watching him. So as planned, I ran down to embrace Zach as he scored the winning shot for the team. I tried to kiss him, but I forgot that I was in the form of a rooster. This made all the audience laugh. Zach tried to run away, but I chased after him and I stumbled. The rooster head fell off and everyone saw me. This time, the laughter and screams were even louder, but I just saw Zach looking at me with embarrassed and disappointed eyes. Talk about humiliating. Worse still, he didn't even help me up, just shook his head, then walked off. At that moment, I just wanted to melt into the ground, but then Jay rushed over and helped me to my feet. Jay drove me home, and he said,
Why did you have to embarrass yourself like that? And for a person who doesn't deserve you?
I replied, He's my boyfriend.
He isn't anymore. I know it hurts like crazy, Aaron. But sometimes we need to let go of things that no longer belong to us. Don't lose your self-worth for unworthy things.
I looked up at him with teary eyes. So, you don't want Jace back?
Nah. She's made it pretty clear that she wants him, not me. And I'm not going to be second best to anyone. Besides, she lied to me. And I'm not about that.
I guess you're right. I sighed. It just hurts so much.
Aaron, you're a strong girl. You'll get through this. But please promise me one thing, though. No more crazy ideas to try and win him back.
I know. I managed a laugh. When I got home, I thought about what Jay said. I guess he had a point. No matter how hard I tried to pull Zach back, he still turned away from me. And the same with Jace. I tried to fix things with her, and only ended up making everything worse. Thinking about it, Zach wasn't right for me. He wanted me to change who I was just to fit in with his life better. That wasn't right. I wanted a boyfriend who was proud of being seen with me, not embarrassed. And for Jace, she'd lied to me, and then she hadn't even respected me enough to talk to me before moving out. She wasn't a true friend. I knew that now. As the weeks passed, I finally got over everything. About Jace and Zach, I still see them around campus, but we don't talk. I heard they are a couple now, but the boys in the basketball club don't like her very much because she never lets Zach go out after matches with them. She also never dances and cheers happily for their victory. Well, that's not my problem now anyway. Ha! As for Jay and I, we're getting closer. I guess we bonded over our broken hearts. Also, it turns out we're far more similar than we realized. We started to hang out more, and then yesterday I suggested that we should go to the amusement park. His face was serious for a second, but then we both burst into laughter. I apologized to him for being ridiculous before, and he said,
Never mind. I love your positive vibes.
I smiled happily and said, Don't worry. This time I won't distract you while you're trying to win me a teddy." Then we both laughed. We're not officially a couple yet, but I can feel something between us. But there's no rush. I'm living in the moment, and it's pretty darn great. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have an amusement park to get to.